Thank you.
Thank you so much for being here. We really look forward to hearing your insight about writing and your career. So now we can pull up the introduction slide and get to know a little bit more about Professor Morano. So if we could open up to the introduction slide. Okay, so John Morano, Professor Morano, is a professor of journalism at Monmouth University right here in New Jersey, and he has authored 4 novels in his series, the Morano Eco-Adventure Series, and a textbook for aspiring film critics called Don't Tell Me the Ending. Under contract with Grey Gecko Press, Professor Morano is currently working on his 4th novel called Flocks of One, and an identification guide called Cretaceous Fossils of the Atlantic Coastal Plain. He is concerned with endangered species and habitat depletion, and he pens stories of imperiled creatures and habitats that can't speak for themselves. So, Dr. Morano, if you would like to add anything that I didn't mention, you could do so. Or
No, I think you've covered it, yeah.
Okay, so we'll begin with the interview now. So first, I thought we could talk about your career and how you came to be both a professor and an author yourself. So seeing as you're very successful, and many of us aspire to possibly become professional writers one day, I wanted to know what sparked your own interest in this field of journalism and film critiquing and teaching, just writing in general.
Initially, it really wasn't my interest. I went to college, Clark University in Worcester, Massachusetts as an undergrad, and my intention was to study anthropology and philosophy, and I was a basketball player on the basketball team. And while I was there, I realized how unprepared I was, and that maybe philosophy wasn't the best choice for me. And during the freshman year, at the very end of it, I had taken a course, Intro to Film, and something clicked. I really enjoyed the class. We had to see Citizen Kane, and there were 8 showings of it. I went to all 8. I couldn't stop thinking about what we were seeing, what we were talking about. By the end of the year, I had declared English and film as a double major, and I went over to the student newspaper and told them that I would be their new film critic. They agreed. And then I started to think about, what do I have to do in order to be able to do this for the rest of my life, for a living? And the answer I came up with was, you need to understand film so well and write about it with such style that people will want to pay money to read what you've written. And it seemed to me that at that point, since I was having trouble actually spelling film, nobody would pay money to read what I had to say about movies. So I thought the best thing to do would be study them, study the industry, learn how to write, understand story structure, subplot, characterization, why the Potemkin steps matter, who Hitchcock was, and then do it for the school newspaper every week. And maybe by the time I left school, someone would want to see what I had written about a movie. And that's where it started. When I got out of school, I actually began work for CBS in Manhattan as a bodyguard. They hired me as a bodyguard. And I thought, well, that'll get me through the door, you know. But I realized very quickly that it would be a slow climb if I stayed there. So I sent out a bunch of resumes and wound up at Modern Screen magazine in New York as a film critic and an assistant editor for the nation's oldest movie magazine. And then things started to happen there.
That's really inspiring. Such kind of event, from a bodyguard to a writer,
Yeah,
and not to, at a professional company. Um, so you mentioned that you were a film critic in your school newspaper. Before that, or during your college career, did you happen to participate in any other activities that really propelled your writing interest?
Um, the newspaper did a lot, an awful
Mhm.
lot for me. I
Mhm.
had two roommates who also wrote for the newspaper, and they were much better writers than I was. So I watched what they wrote, I read it, I was really taken with their unique expression and how easy it seemed to come to them. I worked very hard to figure it out, to find my voice, let's say.
Mhm.
It took a while. I also was one of the founding members of Clark University Film Society. Back in
Mhm.
the day, there were no Netflix, there were no DVRs or even VCRs for that matter. So we were in charge of bringing film to campus, and that meant Friday and Saturday nights we selected a second run feature. Sunday nights was a foreign film, and
Mhm.
Wednesday nights was a classic film. And we did that for the entire semester, and I thought that was, for me, it was very interesting to try and program what the campus would see. And back in the day, that was the only way we were going to see movies. So that just kind of solidified my interest in film and writing about it and studying it.
Mhm. Well, I think it's great that, in your college career you pursued extracurricular activities that were right up your alley that you want to do maybe in the future. And you had just figured out what you wanted to do just your freshman year of college, right?
Yeah, I knew I liked it.
Mhm.
I guess I asked I'm fairly pragmatic, so I
Mhm.
asked myself if I could have any job in the world, what job would I want? Because I'm going to do it for the rest of my life. So it
Mhm.
might as well be something I really want. My answer was point guard for the New York Knicks, and I didn't think I was going to get that phone call. So I said, well, what's the second best job in the world? And what I decided was I would like to get paid to go to the movies. I
Mhm.
want someone to pay me to go to the movies. And then I write something about what I just saw, what it all meant, and then they pay me to go to another movie. So that meant film critic, and I hoped that by the time I graduated, I could get to the point where that would be within reach, let's say.
Mhm. I think that's a great message for all of us in the program, us being high schoolers, trying to figure out our career path in the next few years. And it's great that you can really choose your career goal based off of what you're actually interested in, and you can make a lifelong career out of it. Um, so you mentioned also that you were a film critic for your newspaper. So do you by any chance have a favorite assignment or project that you did?
Well, while I was a student, I can tell you the first film I ever reviewed was Star Wars: The Empire Strikes Back, and the second movie I ever reviewed was Woody Allen's Stardust Memories. And after
Mm-hmm.
those two movies, I was hooked. I was in. While I was a student, I drove from Worcester, Massachusetts to Radio City Music Hall in a 74 Maverick with one headlight and nothing but change in my pocket, and I saw Abel Gantz's Napoleon. It was a film made in 1917 by Abel Gantz, and he lost the movie. Actually lost it. And Francis Ford Coppola found it, refurbished it, and premiered it at Radio City Music Hall in New York with his father, Carmine Coppola, conducting a live orchestra with the silent film. And it
Mm-hmm.
seemed like a big film event to me. So I drove all the way there just to cover that to get it in my portfolio. And that was, as an undergrad, one of my favorite film experiences.
Mm-hmm. And did you find that your critiques and your assignments were reaching an audience? And maybe did people come up to you and tell you, "Hey, I read your piece and I